Hello once again, or maybe for the first time. Either way, I'm happy that you're tuning in. I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J, and joining me for the 114th or 19th time is Talmadge Roger Varnado the third.
You made me wait on that, but I'm glad to be here as always.
Yeah, I didn't want you to forget and think that you were the first or the second somehow. Great to have you here, Talmadge.
Thanks, sir.
And we're going to be doing a topic similar to what we've done in the past, but a different one. We've done in the past NBA players that did not meet expectations. Today we're going to do NFL players who did not meet expectations. I do not know Talmadge's choice. He does not know mine. These guys may be people you're familiar with. Maybe they aren't. The basic consensus for this topic or the criteria is guys that based on what they did in college and what they were expected to do in the NFL didn't quite live up to that. Doesn't mean they were worthless, just that they didn't really live up to what we expected and maybe what the media in general expected for them to accomplish in the National Football League. So, Talmadge, why don't you kick us off and give us your subject for the day?
All right. Well, I actually had another name because you told me about this a few weeks ago.
Right.
And I had another name in mind. And then, believe it or not, on YouTube, I watched, I think Thursday night, the 1979 NFC Championship game, Cowboys versus Rams, from beginning to end.
Oh, wow. Okay, first of all, that's awesome.
And another name popped up, and I'm going to go
Okay.
with that one. Thomas Hollywood Henderson, former linebacker of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not overly familiar, but I know who you're talking about. Okay.
If you and the reason why I say this, first of all, Thomas came from a small college. He came from Langston University, which is an historically black college in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So I can't say that there was big thoughts of him coming out of the draft.
Right.
But once he was drafted and at the combine and on the field, all of a sudden that changed. He wore 56, much like Lawrence Taylor. Had great speed.
Before Lawrence Taylor,
Yeah,
but yeah.
right around that same time, but yeah, a little before. And he had great speed. Some say it 4.3, 4.4. And for that time at linebacker,
Yeah.
even today that's good, but for that time especially. And the biggest thing I knew about him as far as physically how he played is the speed that he had, and that was shown. He actually ran kicks back for touchdowns. And you don't see linebackers
At
running
linebacker.
kicks. Now, he wasn't like the returner, but they would run gadget
If it was
plays.
a short kick or a bouncer.
Or a lot of times too, the kick returner would get it and hand it off to him because he'd do
Oh.
an end around on the game, and he ran touchdowns back as a linebacker. So that tells you how fast
How
he was.
many people in history have that stat?
Right.
Maybe one.
Right.
I don't know how many
Right.
other linebackers.
If
have
there
done
are,
that.
they're not very many.
Yeah.
He's great in coverage, obviously, because of his speed.
I would hope so. Yeah.
He's very agile, very flexible. All the measurables. He ran as a matter of fact, he ran an interception back in that championship game that
Okay.
I watched. What got Thomas? The reason why Thomas didn't reach his full potential was he had a big time drug issue. And I don't know all the facts of the story because it was years ago, but I remember something along the lines of he was high during I think that championship game on cocaine, and he was sitting on the sidelines eyeballing Tom Landry, thinking of ways to kill him. So,
Not always the best career move. Here's
had-
the man that decides my fate. Let me maybe plot murder in the midst of
yeah,
this.
he had his battles, and
Man.
then of course, I was with the Cowboys for a few years, and then finally they grew tired of his act and they released him. And I believe he was picked up by the Houston Oilers and also by the New Orleans Saints, but didn't stick. And then he had troubles continuously after he left football. The interesting part about Thomas, and most people that do know him probably know this, he actually went on to win the Texas lottery.
That's interesting. I did not know
And
that.
got, I forget the number or dollar amount, but several $1 million. And if I remember correctly, I could be wrong here, so don't quote me on it, but I believe he turned around and won it a second time. And he now has reportedly turned his life around, hadn't been in the news for anything negative for years. So I'm glad to see that. But just physically what that guy could have, because at that speed and with that athleticism, you're talking at that era about comparably to Robert Brazile or to Lawrence Taylor. And
You're
both of
talking
those
about
guys
a
are
guy
in the
that the
Hall of
league
Fame.
had never seen. Yeah, you're talking about a guy that could have totally revolutionized. Because Lawrence Taylor is a name that I think most of us would say, arguably, without maybe a ton of argument, the best outside linebacker that's ever played. A guy that just completely was a game changer.
Yeah.
Same thing could be said if he would have kept his life on track.
Yeah. So
sounds like.
And that's the thing. When you're compared to Robert Brazile and to Lawrence, and fewer people know about Robert Brazile, but he's a Hall of Famer also. Great linebacker for the Houston Oilers in the 70s. And a lot of people that do know football say Robert Brazile was Lawrence Taylor before Lawrence Taylor.
Well, especially people in South America would probably say that.
I don't get it. That means I do. But yeah, so that's my guy, just for the pure athleticism and what he could have been.
Yeah.
And also because how his life turned around, winning the lottery and all those kinds
That's
of
a really
things.
cool story, yeah.
And he's a totally different person now from what everyone says. So that's my guy, but I'm curious as to who's yours.
That's pretty amazing. Well, I did not, we do not have an overlap. I always choose multiple players in case, so I'm not sitting here going, but you took mine. So the guy I have is from a little more recent time, and some of you may know a little more about this guy. He had a great college career, was the first sophomore ever to win the Heisman, has multiple NCAA and SEC records, former Florida Gators quarterback Tim Tebow. When he graduated at the end of his college career, he held 5 NCAA records, 14 SEC records, and 28 University of Florida statistical records. He was the SEC's all-time leader in career passing efficiency, 170.8, completion percentage, 67.1, passing touchdown to interception ratio, 5.5 to 1, rushing yards by a quarterback, 2,947, rushing touchdowns of any position with 57, and total touchdowns responsible for, so passes and rushes, with 145. And as far as NCAA Division I records, he's still second in passing efficiency for career, third in career yards per attempt at 9.3, eighth in career rushing touchdowns for any position. Also owns the record for most consecutive games in which he both threw at least one touchdown pass and scored at least touchdown run, 14. So 14 consecutive games, not of one or the other, but of a pass and a run in the same game. Yeah. In his Heisman-winning season, 2007, as a sophomore, he had 3,286 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, and had 895 rushing yards with 23 touchdowns. That was his best statistical season. He did have over 2,700 yards passing the other 2 years. As a senior, he had 910 rushing yards, so not quite 1,000. But the guy had a very prolific college career.
Yes.
6'3", 240-ish, big, powerful guy. When he was in college, he was one of the best short yardage runners in the country. Not just as a quarterback. He was literally one of the best short yardage runners in the entire NCAA. I knew he was not your prototypical quarterback. For as great as his college career was, he's not Peyton Manning. He's not Drew Brees. And like you and I talked about in a previous episode, we were talking about Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achahani, even though it's different positions. Thank you. Even though these guys are different positions, they're special athletes. Mm-hmm. Keep what makes them special. Utilize them for what's great. So when Tebow was coming out of college, and you may not have heard me say this because actually that might have been the time where we kind of lost contact a little bit and weren't talking as regularly. I told a lot of people at that time, he's not Peyton Manning. He's not Joe Montana. He's not Drew Brees. If someone drafts him and expects him to be their every down, prototypical pocket passer NFL quarterback, his career is going to be squandered. Could he develop into that? Okay. So you're telling me there's a chance.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
My thought was keep what makes a guy special. He's a unique quarterback. He's unlike, I'd say unlike almost anyone you've seen. There's other guys that are faster, the Lamar Jacksons and the Randall Cunninghams and Jay Daniels, but they don't have the size and the power that with Tebow. Tebow in the combine ran like a 4.7 40, so it wasn't his speed.
Right.
He was just athletic and strong and could stiff arm and break tackles. Plus, he's got a pretty strong arm. So my thought was whoever drafts him should use him at quarterback sometimes, but put in a package of plays, like design an offense around him for when he's on the field. And I said, ultimately, my vision for him, I think his best position will be tight end. But he's not going to be ready to play there as a rookie because he's competing against the best players in the world in football, and he hasn't played tight end. So use him as a situational quarterback. Work with him every year to move him towards tight end. At the time, I didn't have this comparison to make because I'd never heard of the player I'm about to reference. But Taysom Hill is what I saw Tim Tebow becoming. And when I started seeing Taysom Hill, I was like, that the Saints know how to use this guy. That's what, unfortunately, no one did for Tebow. So Tebow's NFL career lasted 3 seasons.
Right.
He was drafted by the Broncos. His first year, he started 3 games. Numbers weren't great, so I'm not even going to go into them. They're not worth making a big deal out of. 2011, his second season, he did play 14 games, started 11. Of those 11 games he started, the Broncos went 7-4.
Right.
Okay, so it proved he can play the quarterback position. He had 1,729 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Did have 660 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. So for a quarterback and in somewhat limited play, that's pretty impressive numbers rushing. Then he went to the Jets the next year and attempted like 32 passes all year. No, I think he attempted 8 passes, had 32 rushing attempts.
Okay.
They barely used him. 2013, he signed with the Patriots, got cut in the offseason. Got cut in the preseason.
Right.
2014, he signed with the Eagles, got cut in the preseason. He then took like 6 years away from football, went into baseball, did end up playing AAA with the Mets. Right. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I did look at them. I think his career high batting average was like 273, which is not bad if you got 42 home runs, but his career high home runs was 6. Yeah. So, look, not insulting him. He's a great athlete. Baseball is very hard. It's very technical. It's probably the hardest sport to really be great in because of all the, you got to be able to hit fastballs and curveballs. There's so many different layers.
Yeah, as
to
the hitter,
it.
Either that or playing quarterback is going to be the toughest sports. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I concur. So, not trying to insult him, but his baseball career didn't go great. He then, after being away for 6 years, did try to come back with the Jaguars, reunite with Urban Meyer, and play tight end.
Right.
And when I saw that, I literally wanted to say, what did I tell y'all? Like, I wanted to tell the football world, this is what, but it's 9 years too late. Y'all should have started working on developing this guy as a tight end right out of college. He might be starting by now. He got cut in the preseason because, again, he hadn't played that position.
And there's a lot of players. There's a lot of people when he came out were saying that. It wasn't just you.
I'm not saying this is my own original idea, but I was going, this is what we should do with this guy.
But you always have to wonder. And with Tebow, I don't think this was the case because he seems like the type of guy that would have done anything to make the team. But a player has to want to change positions as well.
That's true, too.
And I'm not saying he didn't, but I don't know is what I'm saying.
That's true.
Somebody could have gone to him and said that. He's like, no, because, some are
Some
no,
guys
I'm
will
a
say,
quarterback.
I'm a quarterback.
Yeah, so
yeah.
You never know.
And that is true. I haven't met the guy yet. I'd love to. I'm a big fan of him. I love him as a he's one of my favorite college quarterbacks, and you know this because we've talked off camera quite a lot. I love dual threat, versatile quarterbacks.
Yes.
I've been a big fan of. The college game. Eric Crouch, Tim Tebow, Vince Young. I was huge fans of all those guys. Lamar Jackson's one of my favorite players. I love Jaden Daniels, Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray. All these guys, if I had an NFL team, that's the quarterback I'm going after. If I'm coaching or if I'm on a team, I want that type of quarterback. So Tebow does fit that. He wasn't going to be a Lamar Jackson on the next level.
Right.
But I'd love to have him and Lamar Jackson on the same team because then I've got a Taysom Hill and a Lamar Jackson. I think Tebow could have been that type of player. I like him even more. And some of y'all, if you've been following the channel or if you know me personally, know this. Tim Tebow, like myself, is a born-again Christian. He's a very serious Christian. So I'm a bigger fan of him as a person.
Yeah.
But I still loved him as a college player. And I think he's got the tools. He could have had a really good NFL career had he been utilized properly. So he's my choice for an NFL player that didn't meet expectations. I can't really say it was because he failed necessarily. I think he wasn't utilized for where he could have been great.
Well, to me, he's just one of the more polarizing players, especially for this topic, because you're saying didn't meet expectations. There's a lot of folks who didn't have high expectations for him.
That's also true.
So there's a challenge there. But for those that did, and if you look at, he was taken in the first round. So
Yeah.
if you're looking at that, yeah, he didn't meet expectations.
Right, because a
But then there's
first-round
a lot of
draft pick, you've got expectations.
But a lot of folks didn't expect him to do anything in the league.
So
at
for a lot of
quarterback.
people, they wouldn't agree
Yeah,
with what I'm
so
saying.
That's a tough one. But it's always been that way. He was like a lot of quarterbacks in college. He was a winner. He was tough.
National champion, Heisman
He was
winner.
a leader.
Yeah.
He was an athlete. All those kinds of things. And I'm a fan of the dual threat quarterback too. But sooner or later, a dual threat quarterback's going to have to win a Super Bowl because all the names you mentioned.
So far, 0
There's
career
no
Super Bowls. Yeah.
of all those names. And he could have been the one.
He could have
now,
been the
Steve
one.
Young was.
I was
you could
about to say,
you could
Steve
say
Young
Steve-
and Russell Wilson do have Super Bowls,
You-
and they are those types of quarterbacks as well. But to your point, that's two guys we just now thought of out of the history
And
of the league.
I would say Russell is more of a guy who can elude the rush, and he does have
Not
some
as much a
speed,
dual threat, but,
but
he kind of is.
They,
But I see
don't-
what you
they
mean.
didn't do a lot of designed runs
True.
for him. He was
If a
an
play
ad
broke
libber.
down, he could
Yeah.
run because he's an athlete.
Where
so.
with Young and some of these dual threats, they're calling plays for them to run.
Yeah, that is a good point.
And I'm not knocking what you're saying at all because I love the dual threat quarterback
Right.
too. But ultimately, and I know it's a different topic, but ultimately somebody's going to have to win a title.
How many
at some
how many
point.
Super Bowls have these guys I've talked about won versus Joe Montana,
Right.
Terry Bradshaw, Tom Brady,
Exactly.
Peyton Manning, Eli Manning.
Even
So
Patrick Mahomes, who can move around.
he's athletic, but he's not really
but
your
he's
dual
going to stay
threat,
in that
but
pocket
he's,
if if
I concur. Mahomes is athletic enough, obviously. He's got multiple Super Bowls. So your point is valid, and I've heard that over the years too, and I don't disagree with it. Steve Young and Russell Wilson are the ones who I can give a little pushback. And Lamar Jackson almost could have kind of sort of got there this past year, but officially didn't. It didn't happen. So very valid. But, and again, going back to Tebow, I just saw him as a Taysom Hill player, and he didn't get the chance to live up to that. So anyway, that's our topic for today. One that we could explore many other times because we both, before camera rolled, talked about, we both had multiple guys we could have gone into this episode with. So if you did like the video, please click the like button. If you have not already done so, what is it that we've been saying they could do?
There you
Subscribe
go.
to the channel. That's the one. It really will help me more than y'all probably understand to continue bringing you this type of content as well as many other kinds. So thank you so much for stopping in today. For Talmadge Roger Varnado III, I am Jared Johnson, the Jared J. I hope y'all have a great week, and I hope I see you again real soon.